Hello and welcome to the Paper 1 Edexcel History support video, which is designed to help look at the British thematic study and historic environment. In this example, we're looking at medicine in Britain, circa 1350 to present. We're looking at how we're going to access this paper, what it looks like, and part 1 will look at what section A is like. Right, so the paper itself is an hour and 15 minutes long. There are two sections. Section A is looking primarily at the Western Front and medicine. And then section B is looking at the rest of the medicine course. Notice there are 6 questions. The first 3 questions are donated to sources mostly, and it's asking you to draw on some knowledge from the First World War. Timings are on the slide. So the first question says describe 2 features of. So you make a point, then back that up with some evidence. Make another point and back that up with some evidence. 5 minutes. Second question, how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into whatever? For this, you're looking at the sources separately, but you want to look at nature, origin and purpose and how useful those features are. Remember to draw on the content of the source as well. That's 8 marks, 10 minutes long. The third one is how could you follow up source X to find out more about an inquiry into this. This is nice and easy. It lays this out on the paper with 4 spaces. It's worth 4 marks and it's 5 minutes long. And the idea is that you say what the feature is you're going to look at, what question you follow up, and so on. This video is going to have a look at section A, and the second video, part 2, will look at section B, which starts off with an explain one way, which is asking you to find 2 bits of examples from across the time periods it asks, 4 marks, 5 minutes. Explain why, like we've seen before, 3 explain paragraphs worth 12 marks, 15 minutes. And then 30 minutes on the final question, which is how far you agree. How far do you agree? How do you disagree? And linking back to the question within a conclusion at the end. And if you do all those times as they are, you're left with about 10 minutes, and that will give you enough time, or 5 minutes, and that will give you enough time to look over the sources or even reread it again. Right, so question 1, describe 2 features of, in this case, the support trench on the Western Front. In the paper, when you see it, it will give you the features, so it will give you feature 1. And then it will give you a space, normally a line. So that will be feature 1, there's feature 2. It's worth 4 marks, so don't waste too much time on it. It's 5 minutes. So in this example, we've started off by saying the support trench was set back from the front line trenches and could be connected to the front line via communication trenches. There's 1 mark. These were made for soldiers to retreat into if the front line was attacked. There's my 2nd mark for that. Another feature of the support trenches was the level of safety. There's 1 mark. As they were further back, they could be used to store munitions or mobilise troops without the risk of being hit by artillery shells or bullets. There's my 4th mark. Nice and straightforward, hopefully getting you 4 marks. Question 2A is asking how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into, in this case, the system for dealing with injured soldiers on the Western Front. Notice that this is 8 marks, 10 minutes. You've got 2 sources. You are going to be looking at nature, origin and purpose, NOP. Don't forget to use a little bit of own knowledge. Let's have a quick look at source A. It says it's the writings of a chap called Henry Buckle, who is a soldier who is there. He wrote a diary, nature. He was in the trenches and typed it up after the war. And he's talking about 1915. So you've got origin there, which is after the war, but he is recalling what he remembers in 1915. The purpose is probably to record or to express how he felt. The diary is personal, hence why your purpose is going to be very different. Then you actually have a look at the content. It talks about how he's been wounded, how the stretcher bearers have been really busy and they're managing to get back by themselves because they aren't wounded enough to be carried. Took us all night to get back, it says, and then the RAMC, the Royal Army Medical Corps staff, kept coming in but didn't seem able to mend me up. It then suggests that they went to a field hospital for a week. So that is telling you a little bit about how the injured were moved around the battlefields. Next one is a photograph. So the nature is different here, and it's showing stretchers outside a dressing station on the Western Front during the Battle of Arras. So this is 2 years on. There's your origin of the photo. They're waiting to be transported to a casualty clearing station. So the purpose really is probably to record for the Army generals the situation on the Western Front. So there's your nature, origin and purpose. That's only taken me a couple of minutes, 1 minute 48 to look that over. Now let's have a look at an example answer. So this is just one source And let's try and highlight the nature, origin, purpose and use. So remember NOP, N-O-P, and we want usefulness. So I've said straight away it's very useful, and then I've said it provides an excellent account of the step-to-step problems faced by one soldier after he was wounded. It mentions the RAMC staff, so I've used a quote there, and then I've given this. This suggests that one problem for injured soldiers is the lack of experience for serious wounds, which would explain why he was moved on. So I'm giving you a reason as to why his transport was a problem. Here I've mentioned the nature. The nature of the source is a diary. It's useful. Look how I've dropped useful again in. It's a personal insight and reveals the strain faced on medical staff. Here is where I'm mentioning content. So I'm coming back to the idea of content of the source. So therefore he had time to edit the response depending upon his memory. The origin of the source, second part of my NOP, being 1915, reveals that a clear system of aid recovery had been established into the second year of war, from stretcher bearers to regimental aid posts. So again, I've used my content there from the source. Purpose of the source makes it useful as it's been produced as a reflection. This could also make it less useful though, as we only have one man's point of view. I could extend that further by talking about the fact that it all seems a little bit disorganised. The fact that they've got to make their own way from trench back to the aid post. So there's one example. You'd repeat that for source B. Right, so we get to 2B. How could you follow up source A? This is the last part of section A, and it's the last part of the Western Front questions. So we look back at section A, which is on our right hand side, and it's asking for 4 separate points, 1 mark per point, but they've all got to connect. So you can't just have random question, random detail. So the first thing is, source A was all about that guy who was wounded, and he talks about the staff, the RMC, probably being a little bit disorganised. So the detail I'm going to focus on is right at the bottom, the bit I've underlined and arrowed. The RMC staff keep coming in but don't seem able to mend me up. The question I'd like to ask is, what level of training did RAMC staff receive to assist on the front line? Type of source, don't just put army records, that's too vague, you've got to be a bit more specific. So I'm going to ask for RAMC medical staff records from 1950 to 18, see how their training developed is what I put. How might this help answer my question? Well, it would reveal the scale of training and deployment of staff to see if things did improve for soldiers. So I'm trying to say how the source might tell me the answer I'm after. Hopefully that's given you an idea of how to do section A. Section B for the medicine paper is on the part 2 of this video. Thank you very much for listening.